So what we're looking at are the latest numbers for the top, or the last entries of the work that I've put up on the YouTube channel. And as space-time communication coordinates, the numbers that I'll address today are the 4 here, the 3 here, and the 2. 2. I don't know why I said 2. That's really interesting. I suppose I said 2 because of the duplication of the Greek word for ellipsis, and ellipsis. So 2, but it's of course 4 and 3 and 4. And I'll do so within the context of what we're listening to in the background and this music, which of course is All the Tired Horses by Bob Dylan from the album Self-Portrait. I'll discuss that briefly before we move on. But and this is the cover by Lisa O'Neill. And of course, the way that she performs this cover is completely different from the way that it's presented on the Bob Dylan album called Self-Portrait. And ironically, as Self-Portrait, it's not a genre that Dylan usually performs. It obviously imitates children's songs for games, children's game songs, and also imitates in a certain sense, or enacts a variation on this idea of the work song. And it's sung by what to my ears who sound like a performance of African American young women, and I don't know if that's the case. I haven't looked up the performance history of it, and but I'm I'm confident in saying it belongs to this genre of children's games that develops out of African American culture, and it's just a couplet, right? It's these 2 lines that are chanted and repeated, and with some overlap on and variation on the vocals in the way that a children's game song would be sung, and it has a light mood in the Dylan version, and I think there are 3 female voices rather than 1 as performed here, and it's very different kind of performance than what Lisa O'Neill brings out. And of course, I'm also referencing the way that a cover reinvents an original, and that is an act of creativity. That selection itself is an act of creativity, and the way that relates to the idea of communication coordinates and these numbers is that in a certain sense I've created a system in which my viewers and my audience can play, right? They can play, they can make selections, and they can point to, they can indicate, they can use these numbers as indices, and by observation as communication. So the first premise is that when you observe these videos and these creations, that you leave a trace, right? So your observation is not only an observation, but it leaves a trace of upon these objects as having been observed, and I will intervene if if those observations exceed communicability in a certain sense. And what I mean by exceed communicability is sometimes the numbers get so high that it just becomes a matter of quantification rather than signification. And I'm completely not interested in quantification, right? That's the Joe Rogan game. Everyone's very proud when they have 1 million viewers. I'm totally unconcerned with that. I'm only concerned with the making of meaning. And we'll get towards what inspiration as quantification might mean in relationship to the making of meaning, and how quantification can come back into this game as a matter of inspiring politicized action, and I don't have anything against that. In other words, there's a value in creating crowd, right? Like the Italian Sardines, the Italian anti-fascists, and it's really important right now in this moment because Italy is being threatened by an election that may very well go to these authoritarian political figures, and so we need those sardines packed in there, those large crowds of individuals, and in that sense, I don't have anything against having a large audience if it inspires political actions that have more power and efficiency because of the large numbers. But in terms of signification, I'm really more interested in meaning making. So we're going to address this series of numbers 4, 3, and 4. And I'll play the Lisa O'Neill cover again while we're still on this page. 4, 3, and 4, and I'm gonna address those as as I've stated before. There are always a number of different ways that one can organize these. One could say that this is number 4, and then follow it with a specification of 3, 43, and 4, which is the way I'm going to look at it. One could look at it as 434 and 11, and then we'd have to make a loop around the 360 degrees. And if you subtract 360 degrees from 434, I believe you get 74. So then that would be 74 and 11. But what we're going to look at is 43 and 4. And as I said, I want to relate it back to this song. And the first way, I suppose, to relate it is that both the song and that number, which references an album of mine called Ladybug Explains the Basic Principles of Thermodynamics to a Sow Bug. So already this idea of heat and work, right, which both heat and work are aspects of the Dylan tune, and then what the relationships are between heat and work, and then specifically the fourth song actually names work. The title is actually too long to perceive here, but I think I can expand this window. But it's work performed across a wide range of variable temperatures. And so in a sense it's meta-discursive, right? Because the title of the album is Ladybug Explains the Basic Principles of Thermodynamics to a Sow Bug, and those basic principles involve because it is thermodynamics, like involve movement and exchanges of heat, so you could say the economy of heat, but also the economy of heat within labor, right? Because this is thinking about heat as performing work, and so the fourth tune on this album is, in a sense, in a way, the most straightforward, and has to, and the let's see, what's the right word? The most conventional way of approaching thermodynamics in the explanation that this ladybug is providing to the sow bug. And then, of course, the reason that it's a ladybug is because her house was on fire, and the reason that it's a sow bug is because sow bugs are very if you were ever in high school and took a biology class and did a sow bug lab in which you moved these poor sow bugs around from different kinds of temperatures and in different kinds of humidities and drynesses, they're very sensitive to these kinds of changes in both thermodynamics and in I don't know if moisture, air moisture, it has a dynamic, but in humidity ranges, right, as well. So Saubag, whose very life is at stake in understanding these principles, is being informed by Ladybug here, and so it's framed as a kind of pedagogy, right, and and uh, and then each of these are metaphors for different types of instances of survival in a certain sense, right? A good enough energy increase refers to the notion of the good enough mother, right? And and that good enough mother has been referenced in various ways recently, by this idea of single parenthood, and also involves also the series, right, that we've been doing, that we supposedly finished, but of course the social political terrorism of the United States government and the United States judicial system continues to take away rights, and so the Secret Life of 14 States now has 16 entries, even though there are only 14 states that we had initially intended to address. But the idea of the good enough mother relates to single parenthood, and it relates to the rights of women in a number of ways that are interesting in relationship to that series, The Secret Life of 14 States as well. Isothermal compression as a game of musical chairs relates to the idea of space-time travel, obviously, and the way that certain kinds of space-time communication coordinates can be manipulated, and distributed across sets, and the way that chance and time frames, like duration, I would, chance as an arbitrary coordinated set of conditions imposed upon space and time, because it's never really chance, right? Even when you're playing musical chairs, you reach the end of the song, and then everybody, so you know it's coming, but you don't know exactly that moment, because the singer has the opportunity to worry it a bit, and either increase the duration of those last few moments, or speed them up, and then it's coming, but you don't know exactly where. So it's not exactly chance, but it's not exactly a determinate set of multi-coordinated values either. Anyway, you get the idea that idea as metaphor relating to a system of communication that both moves in a circle, but also that coordinates various and multiple elements of framed chance, that is constraints that are bound by multiple and overdetermined multiplicities that seem to create implications of chance, and the melancholy of adiabatical processes. I don't want to go through all of them, because I want to kind of get to where we're going, and why I've chosen what I've chosen to do, to perform, to respond to this coordinate. So this coordinate is work performed across a wide range of variable temperatures, and then in relationship to this piece, which I'll go ahead and play again. And this piece, of course, is taking this Lisa O'Neill cover of Bob Dylan, and then in a sense, I'm covering it again in what I perform. And I change one word. I change riding the horse, to writing, the The difficulty for me as, again, in quotation marks, a dysgraphic, right? Because, and we've gone over this a lot, but whatever it is that characterizes, I think, this particular uniqueness of mine, it really, extends, well beyond dysgraphia to, dyscalculia, dyslexia in a certain sense, but I've more or less found a solution, to that problem that involves, form and morphology, shape, and gestalt, the way that in reading. But of course, when you write, you can't produce that as an image that people will, recognize. And you have to go back to, carving out each individual letter again, and then all of the problems that arise with this limitation arise, once again. So anyway, so temperature and work and the performance of the work, and here I'm, outside in the sun, as you can see from the dirt, performing this work, and changing that one word, and the Bob Dylan song, in addition to referencing these genres of work song and African American child's game song, probably refers in some way, to the familiar song Pretty Little Horses, right? So let me see if I can find that. So it may or may not respond to Pretty Little Horses, and there are a number of different variations of this tune. You're probably familiar. This one, hush you by, you cry, go to sleep, little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses. So it's an appeasement song. The child is, restless, sleepless, and appeased by the mother singing the song. And this is, in this instance, nursery rhyme, not a children's game. But I think often, children's game songs grow out of nursery rhymes. So one could easily imagine that, the child was sung this song about the pretty little horses, and then as she grows up and she's playing jump rope or whatever she's playing, she transforms this song, right? So it's another song, it's another, one could imagine that it's in this history, or this imagined representational history of like the transformation of the uses of all these songs. Just like thermodynamics is the transformation of the uses of all these different types of energy, right, that are created out of relationships between heat and the movement of heat from one object to another. We'll get there eventually. And this is what she's gonna get, blacks and bays, dapbles and grays, coach and 6 little horses, hush, baby, don't you cry, go to sleep, my little baby. And then, interestingly enough, in the song, whether it's a word, reference to a work song or a children's song, the way that it's sung would suggest that it's and I'm rushing a little bit because I want to get to what we're actually going to do, but I don't really want this to be an hour-long discussion before we perform the work, the actual thermodynamic work that needs to get done. But here's some additional verses. Way down yonder in the meadow, poor little baby crying mama, birds and the butterflies flutter around her eyes, poor little baby crying mama. Down in the meadow, a wee little lamb, poor little thing crying mama, birds and butterflies flutter around its eyes, poor little thing crying mama. And then of course you get the appeasement, which are the horses. Hush you by, don't you cry, go to sleep, my little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses. And so it's a promise, right? And it's, of course, it's an empty promise because, right, not necessarily. If the horses are a metaphor, I suppose, not necessarily. But you get the sense that, it's in a way, it's a promise that'll never be realized. It's, it's a dream that allows us, to press on. Hush you by, don't you cry, go to sleep, little baby. When you wake, you'll have sweet cake and all the pretty little horses. And of course, in the song, as it's presented by Bob Dylan, and even more so emphasized, in the way that it's sung by Lisa O'Neill, it's the opposite of appeasement. It's first of all not a promise made by the parent to the child, but the worker has work to do, right? Just like the writer here has writing to do, but something is impeding the ability to do that writing. And in this case, something is impeding the ability to do the writing. And the work, requires writing. And it's clearly work because the way that the lyric frames it, the tired horses are the impediment to doing the work, and the work needs to get done. How am I supposed to get my writing done, right? Not that I want to ride these horses for pleasure, but it's a complaint, and it's not a complaint about time off. It's a complaint that the labor can't be performed because the resources aren't there, and it does so at the expense of the horses, right? Lack of empathy for these poor tired horses, who the plight of the horses and the despair and under the heat of the sun isn't of concern. What becomes concern is the inability to perform the labor, and presumably the empathy that's missing is there as a result of the fact that the labor that needs to be performed is a matter of survival, right, or necessity, so that one won't be remonstrated by whoever the boss is, or that one won't fail to plow the field, so that the crops can grow, so that we can survive the winter, etc. And all of that going on, and then relating it back to this metaphor of what many people just take for granted, the ability to write letters quickly down on a piece of paper, or to fill out a scantron, or to sign one's name, whether the signing of that name or the writing of a signature, forward or backward, or upside down, or topsy-turvy, or whatever. So relating that to thermodynamics got me thinking about a lot. Here's a brief, not necessarily very good, but kind of introductory statement on what thermodynamics represents: the study of the relationship between heat, work, and the associated flow of energy. And of course, all of that does go on in art and poetry and social forces, whether we're always thinking about it or not, but I'm always thinking about it. And what I thought about recently, because perhaps I've been performing this The Secret Life of 14 States, I have been remiss in responding to some other social crises, but also social revolutionary momentum, and radical, action momentum. And specifically, I was, thinking about Masa Amini's death and at the hands of the morality police in Iran, and the way that this has inspired a social movement of action and a burning of hijab and of other symbolic representations of this tyranny of this religiously tyrannical moral tyranny that's imposed on women in Iran. And of course, the obvious parallelism to the so-called Christian, and I say so-called because as I pointed out several times in several different contexts, the morality of the alt-right Christian conservative fascists, it doesn't belong, right, in any way, shape, or form to the gospel as it's actually presented as the teachings and the representation of the life of Christ. But it has evolved as a religious tradition, and since the Romanization of Christianity, and become part, right? So that misogyny and patriarchy has become a part of our understanding of Christianity, even though it's not. If you actually read, if you actually read the gospel as a philosophy and as a liberatory spirituality, it's not there. And I'm not going to argue the point here because I don't have time. But I'll just put that out there, and I'm sure that the much of the same thing is true in the tyranny of Islam in Iran and elsewhere, right? So I was thinking about as metaphor, the relationship between heat and the associated flow of energy, but as literalized, right? This metaphor of fire, right? That becomes so important in the burning of all of these symbols of this patriarchal tyranny, and now, in a certain sense, and because we've exceeded the number 14 in the investigation and the exposure of the secret life of those 14 states, even though we've had to persist into West Virginia because West Virginia just enacted some new laws that impose these tyrannical restrictions on the rights of women and their ability to receive adequate health care. And even though we're still engaging that process because unfortunately tyranny doesn't stop at any arbitrary number like 14, but we have an opportunity for a bit of a respite, and I can turn to Masa Amina and some of these brave and radical women in Iran, and the way that I can do that and connect this space-time travel communication coordinate that refers to these relationships between work and flows of energy, right? Radical flows of energy that change and transform social situations just as they transform, situations of energy in the physiodynamics of actions and movements and states of matter in the world. I can do by once again, returning to writing and writing by hand. And of course, we have a volume that's referred to as the book called 144, which is referenced here for other reasons in relationship to, this is not the book called 144, but I'm writing about the book called 144, and I'm writing about the difficulties of writing that book, and why I really don't like having to write this book, but I do it anyway. And when you do something that you don't like doing, but you do it anyway, it's generally referred to as labor. And so the horses are tired. And the work is pained and labored. But I'm going to ride them anyway, because the work needs to get done. So this is a long introduction to discuss the way that I'm going to respond to this space-time travel communication coordinate by returning to the book of called 144 and writing. And writing a few pages for Masa Amina, who died at the hands of the morality police in Iran, and also those who are responding to her death now. With fire.